Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. If you want to listen live in the central Indiana area, you can hear us on 93.5 FM and 107.5 FM. On the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from NBC and Football Morning in America, Peter King joins us. Hey, Peter, thank you very much for jumping on here. And I want to start because you had one of the few one-on-ones with Andrew Luck at the very beginning of Colts camp. So tell us what you think transpired from the Andrew Luck you talked to that day to the one we saw in front of a few folks on Saturday night retiring from the game.
Well, John, as I wrote in my column on Monday, my Football Morning in America column, I just laid out exactly what I think happened, which is on August 4th when I talked to Andrew Luck in Westfield. I asked him many questions, but the relevant question here is there any doubt in your mind that you will play 5 weeks from today against the Chargers? And he said, and I quote, "No, period. No doubt, period." And he went on to say a few other things, but that's the relevant quote. So the question is, what happened between that day and 15 days later when he walked into Jimmy Irsay's office and told Irsay, Reich, and Ballard, I'm going to retire? Question is, what exactly happened? And I think what happened, as I pieced it together, is that that week in doing his rehab, he continued to feel pain and perhaps even a little bit more pain. And on further upon further examination, there was this more expanded injury that had to do with a ligament and his ankle. And so it now was not just isolated to the calf. So that's my understanding of exactly what happened. And I think at that time that he just became convinced that if I play, I'm going to have to play with this damn thing the entire year, and I'm never going to feel right. And I told myself in 2016 that I will never do this again. Now I think everyone who wants to have an opinion on this, and everybody in the United States seems to have an opinion about this, the one opinion that I believe is a logical criticism of Andrew Luck is to say, well, listen, they offered you the chance to go on the injured reserve list with the designation to return midway through the season. There are two ways that you can go on IR. You can just go on IR for the year, or they could designate you as injured reserve but to return after 8 weeks. So he could have done that, and he chose not to because he was just sick and tired of spending his life rehabbing. So at that point, he just said, after many options, he was in the office for more than 2 hours with Irsay, Reich, and Ballard. And at one point, he said to him, guys, my mind is made up. And then it became, from there, both Ballard and Reich, and I'm assuming Jimmy, talked to him multiple times during that week, asking either would you reconsider or is there anything you're unsure about and all this. And so they talked to him several times that week, and by midweek both Ballard and Reich were convinced that this is not going to change. He is absolutely going to retire. And I think the last conversation that Reich and Andrew had was on Friday, and Reich found Andrew Luck to be in a very good place, happy with his decision, totally at peace, and that's how it went down.
Peter King of NBC Football Morning in America, that is his column, and of course you saw that earlier this week. Regarding Andrew Luck is what we're talking about right now on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. And we're going to get into a lot because there is a ton, as you probably either have noticed or would know, is being thrown around here. Do you believe at all that the Colts had any thought that Andrew Luck might in his mind be thinking about retiring before he actually came in and made them aware of that last week?
Well, there's that. I think that question. I think if I can answer the question in two ways. Okay, the first way I would say, did the Colts know back in March or April or whenever that this was a possibility? I know that has been both intimated and reported in various places. I found no corroboration to that, and I'm not saying it isn't true, but I don't buy it. I asked several people involved in this, and I don't buy it. I don't think that that's true. Now, is it possible that on April 6th or 8th or 10th or sometime, or maybe even at the start of training camp, did he give a nod and a wink to Frank Reich? I can't tell you that. They're very close. So, but I don't know anything about it. But I will just say, Andrew Luck is such a smart person. He is such a thoughtful person, and he is such a kind of a consider all options person that it's silly to think that he woke up on August 19th and said, "Yep, I'm retiring." I mean, obviously, as the days went on in August, and he realized that he probably was going to have significant rehab to do to make this right, if he was ever going to be right at all in 2019. If that was going to be the case, I think he had to start thinking, hey, look, I said to myself, I will never do this again. I will never play where I'm in constant pain. So I'm sure that he started thinking about that when the legs started getting worse in the first week or so of August.
It's Peter King with us, and I'd heard something. I initially had heard that Andrew had suggested that he needed some time off, but in reading your column, it was the Colts that, after Andrew approached them about retiring, said, hey, how about if we do this? And then obviously he had made his mind up.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the train had left the station, I believe. And it's interesting. I had Carson Palmer on my podcast, which dropped today. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to Carson is that I've known him for a long time. And he had in a 15-year career, 6 major injuries. He had one devastating knee injury in 2006, and he had another torn ACL in 2014. So he has rehabbed in a major way his knee twice. He's had a broken arm. He had a significant elbow damage. So, I mean, he knows what Andrew Luck was feeling. And, I think one of the things that, in an antiseptic way, when people are just looking at this, I was on with Chris Russo yesterday, the Mad Dog on Sirius, and he was killing Andrew Luck because, why didn't he do this in April or May so the team would be able to get ready to move on without him? And I said, because in April and May and June, this was a calf strain, and all the doctors were telling him, this is going to go away, don't worry about it. And so, he didn't know. And once he found out the seriousness of it, it changed. And, John, it would be easy for this to fit into in between the lines and to be a nice, convenient story about somebody who was hurt and he should have done this or should have done that. But it's very, very hard for me to fault Luck in what he was feeling. And in my opinion, this is just, I don't know this, okay? And I'm trying to be a little Freudian here. But I believe that the Andrew Luck that we saw at that press conference, if you had said to him, you have to rehab this for the next 2 months. We need you, and everything. I think Andrew Luck might have cracked. I mean, he is sick of feeling sick. He's tired of feeling hurt, and people can criticize him for that, like man up. But I mean, if you've been hurt or had some injury that you're rehabbing for all but 5 months of the last 4 years, which is factually accurate, okay, 5 months he's felt relatively healthy in the last 5 years, the last 4 years. I don't really know what you'd want this guy to do personally. And I get it. Everybody's saying man up, go on IR, get ready. But in his case, I just think this is a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, and Peter King joins us. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. The criticism that I have had has gone back, and it comes back from 2017 as well. And this is how the Colts look right now. And these are the discussions we are having because it's Sports Talk Radio and you're getting fired up people, is that you have a majority, I don't know if I can say majority, maybe at least an even number of Colts fans that no longer are going to believe anything that the Colts say by virtue of what has transpired here, because they think the Colts have been trying to getting over on them, have not been, being upfront with them to sell tickets or whatever. And the timing of it does stink. Now, do I believe that? I do not. The timing stinks, and I have been critical regarding that. But I also think this. I think Andrew saying what he has said, either to you or when he has decided to talk during camp, or even what has, because he's been driving this entire thing, what has he wanted, Frank Reich or anybody else within the organization to say, regarding his situation, kind of leads to all these questions and these allegations that the Colts have not been up front with everybody around here. And the timing, I think you can be critical of, and kind of the mess that everybody else is left to clean up around here, you can also be critical of, while at the same time understanding if the guy doesn't want to deal with pain, don't deal with pain, walk away.
I think that's fair. And I think anybody who had season tickets to the Colts, Carson Palmer had a great point to me on my podcast. He said to me, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, the fans have a right to be really pissed off because they were expecting to be a great team this year with Andrew Luck. Now, they still may be a great team with Jacoby Brissett, and I think they're going to have a good year, personally. But the fans have a right to be ticked off about this because they saw no indication, and then all of a sudden the guy walks away. So I get it. I agree with Palmer that you can't control the way a fan is going to think, and there's going to be some anger about this. There's no doubt about it. But I also think that 2 years from now, when people look back at Andrew Luck and how this all ended, whatever happens with the Colts, it's just my belief, and it might be a naive belief. I think that even the people who right now are really ticked off at Andrew Luck will look back, the vast majority of them, 2 years, and say, I understood why he did it, and the timing was bad, and he left us in the lurch. There's no doubt about it. He did leave us in the lurch. But I'm really glad he was our quarterback for 6 or 7 years. You can feel both ways. This is not – those feelings should not be mutually exclusive.
I thought the other night, and this is just me thinking, and I don't know if you saw the press conference or watched it or whatever, but I thought Chris was mad, and Chris hasn't said anything, and I know that they're kind of a little bit under radio silence right now over there. But I thought Chris looked mad, and I thought Chris looked mad well beyond the fans booing when he walked off the field, or the fact that this whole thing kind of got shot up because of Adam Schefter's tweet or whatever. I thought he was just kind of mad. It looked like he was mad about just the decision in the situation. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but it didn't look like he was just mad about the booing or anything else. He just looked angered. I don't know, maybe because he's having to, again, mop up messes that he didn't feel he has to be mopping up.
I spoke to him for, 20 minutes, 25 minutes on Sunday. And again, I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not looking at my notes right now, but he said, "Am I disappointed?" Yes, really disappointed. But he said, "I'm not angry with Andrew. It's a bad situation." And he understands that. No one would argue with him. It is a bad situation. But I do think that the interesting thing about Chris Ballard is, think of what's happened to him in the last 18 months. He identifies because I don't know what Mike Vrabel would have chosen, but I can tell you that a week into January, or maybe 10, 12 days into January, Chris Ballard had Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels neck and neck. Or Josh McDaniels, they were even in his mind. And so at that point, obviously he's got to choose one of them. And I think he chose Josh because he really wanted Andrew to have a mentor who had worked with the great and powerful Brady. So anyway, that all sort of blows up. And then he has this thing happen to him. And I think one of the reasons why I've got respect for Ballard is that the night that the Josh thing happened, at about 11:20 at night, I remember talking to him on the phone, and he went through everything, and he was fairly transparent about everything that happened with me. And it was similar with this situation, talking to him on Sunday about this. And again, look, so I have this position where, I've built up these relationships and I have this job. So a lot of people in the league are going to talk to me, and I don't necessarily give Chris Ballard credit altogether for talking to me, but he has bled over the phone with me on the two worst moments of his professional career. And the point that I would make about that is not, hey, look at me, I can talk to Chris Ballard. But the point is that I believe that Ballard knows that in this job, things are going to blow up sometimes, and you better be willing to face the music. And that's who I want with me when I'm trying to build a team long term. I have a guy who you can see bleed a little bit, and maybe he was bleeding a little bit on Saturday night. But you know what? That's okay, because I think everybody who loves the Colts, they don't want an antiseptic reaction. They want a guy who is pissed off a little bit, and to be the guy who is going to look into the cameras and say, hey, listen, we're not only going to be all right, we're going to be really good, because I think that's the way Chris Ballard really feels.
He is Peter King of NBC Football Morning in America. That's his column. He's got a podcast as well. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I'm going to maybe try to compare a note or two with you right now. Regarding the calf that turned into the ankle, I was told that it happened on a hit late in the season, and it was a situation he played with until the end of the season. Did you ever get an answer as to how legitimately that calf injury came down?
I asked Andrew about this. I said, I hear this happened last season, sometime late in the year. And he said, oh, you get hit a lot. He was evasive, and he didn't answer the question directly. And so I don't know exactly when it happened, but I've heard the same thing that you heard, that it happened last year, and then it just never went away by the time he started to work out this year.
Peter, do you think that he'll ever play the game of football again?
I don't know. I really don't know. My gut feeling is no, because he's such a multifaceted individual. But I truly don't know. I don't know how anybody can know that right now, because this is just my opinion from 10,000 feet looking down on this, because I'm not there every day. I'm not there at all. So, I'm barely there. I'm there 3 days a year maybe. So I don't know all the parties. I mean, I've talked to Andrew, 12 to 15 times in my life, and we joke around and we talk about books and everything like that. And I like him, but I can't sit here and say that, I really know Andrew Luck. I don't. I mean, we know each other in a professional way. So I can't tell you that, but I do. I have this opinion after watching him the other night, after talking to some of the people involved, and after knowing and talking to Matt Hasselbeck too, quite honestly, the other day. I really have this strong feeling that football became something for Andrew that was no longer a joy. Football to him meant pain, and football to him meant absolutely no fun. And it's easy to sit here and say, wah, 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 it doesn't mean fun. Go do your job. And if that's the way you feel, then that's the way you feel. But this is a guy who, again, I just think that you have to understand that, you're at the top of your profession, but what would it be like to be at the top of your profession and to every day wake up and something would hurt, not just a little thing, but something would hurt a lot. It reminds me a little bit, although in a much different way. I'll never forget when Brett Favre, after the 95 season, basically went to get treatment for 37 days in a rehab facility for Vicodin addiction. The night before he left, at the time I knew him quite well and I covered him a lot, and I talked to him the night before he left. And he said, everybody says to me, man, what a life you have. It must be great to be Brett Favre. What a wonderful, wonderful thing to do for your life. And he said, well, would you feel that way if you knew that in order to be that, in order to feel that way, I had to take all these pain pills all the time to be able to play and to be able to do my job? I don't think you would. And so, look, I don't think anybody should cry for Andrew Luck. He's made $97 million or whatever it is. He's got a beautiful new wife. They're going to have a baby. He's got a very, very good life. No one in any way should feel sorry for him. Everybody has crosses to bear in this world. But I think it is unrealistic to not see his side of the story if you're highly critical of him. And again, I don't ask anybody to feel the way I feel. I just know that the way I feel is I totally get why he did what he did.
Yeah, and Colts fans are taking a beating for that reaction that they gave.
I don't really blame them. John,
and you don't. And you're absolutely right, Peter. Nor have I.
Yeah, because how would you feel if just imagine what were there, maybe 15,000 people left in the stadium at the end of the game. I don't even know how many, but I'm guessing it couldn't have been much more than that. There's 15,000 people left in the stadium. And you have been there the whole time. And what fan stays to the end of a preseason game? I mean, a pretty diehard fan, especially when your ones are not anywhere near the field. Okay, so you're watching most guys who are going to be cut, when the final cuts come in. But be that as it may, who is staying until the end? People who love the Indianapolis Colts and who are so excited about this season. So then you start to hear a half hour before the game ends, oh, my God, it sweeps through the stands, I'm assuming, like wildfire. Andrew Luck is retiring tomorrow? What are you talking about? Look, he's right there in the field. He can't be retiring tomorrow, but it's all confirmed, and everybody knows that Adam Schefter is not going to report stuff that isn't true, and so everybody is saying, oh, my God, this is awful. Now, and it totally casts a pall on their night. And I don't blame them. And I don't blame them at all for booing at all.
Yeah, it's been taking a beating around. Here's the other thing. Darius Leonard was asked about this, I think, yesterday, and asked about his first thought, Peter, and he said, selfishly, I was upset. And that's exactly how these fans felt upon reading about that in the stadium at the end of that game Saturday.
I think so too. I don't blame any. it's silly to think that every player in that locker room would be, oh, that's great for Andrew, great. I mean, what every player has been assuming that maybe it's not week 1 or week 2, but Andrew's going to play the majority of this year. And last year he was one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in football. So, if you then wake up one day and you find out he's not playing, he's not anymore ever, what are you going to think? Oh, well, hey, that's great, we'll be fine. No, you're not thinking that. And I mean, I think it would be absolutely normal for players on the team to be somewhat upset. Now, again, I don't have any idea how that locker room feels. I haven't been in that locker room, so I'd be inventing a thing, and I don't do that. I don't know how they feel, but I would understand if some of them were upset about this.
It's Peter King. Catch him on NBC and got his podcast, NBC Football Morning in America. Would you pick the Colts to make the playoffs, led by Jacoby Brissett, the way this team is made?
I'll be picking them to make the playoffs in my column on Monday.
Well, you're going to get a lot of readers from folks around here because of that. So.
Hey, look, I think Jacoby Brissett, everybody looks at 4-11 and all that, but let's compare the two teams and the two offenses the offense he was running then, the offense he's running now, plus the offensive line he has now versus the offensive line he has then. This is a pretty swift guy and a pretty elusive guy. He got sacked 53 times in 15 games, that's a lot of sacks. And so he's not getting sacked 53 times this year. I bet he won't get sacked 25 times. And so my feeling is that he's got a chance. And if you watch some of his tape from 2 years ago, it was not all great. You guys know, you watched every snap. He had some dark, bad moments, but I think in his second year under Frank Reich, learning from Luck and Reich and the offensive staff last year, I think he's got a shot to be pretty good. I won't make any huge predictions, but I think he's got a shot to be pretty good.
All right, check out that column, Football Morning in America, where Peter King, our guest, will pick the Colts to make the 2019 postseason. You'll see him on NBC. He's got a podcast as well, and he joins us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I know this was an incredibly long form, and I had a lot of questions to ask. I appreciate you hanging in there with them all for this long period of time, Peter. Thank you.
Hey, no problem, John. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Peter King on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline.